recognized my face by now. But I am very excited to be here to celebrate Unity Day with all of you. So thank you. So this is a staple day in our community where we pause the routine and pour into our values. Today is a day about celebrating our differences, our heritage, our various and complex viewpoints by spending time learning from one another. We take a moment to sit and listen, learn and challenge, laugh and play together. I hope at some point today that each of you are finding ways to do that alongside each other. Now, let's begin our work. And for today, we are going to welcome and listen to Zahra Arabzada. Many thanks goes to Mr. Peterson, who has helped bring Zahra to our community. And with this special connection, Mr. Peterson will now introduce him.
Good morning, everyone. One of the great joys of the teaching life is having the chance to see your students grow up and to begin building the lives that they've imagined for themselves. So it is with our speaker this morning. I first met Zahra Arabzada 10 years ago when she enrolled as a new student at St. George's School, the boarding school in Rhode Island, where I was serving as the head of school, and Mrs. Peterson was a senior member of the admissions office. In the years since Zahra graduated, we've remained in touch, and I'm honored and privileged to introduce her to you this morning. Zahra's story is ultimately hers to tell, but here are a few highlights. Zahra was born in eastern Iran, in a displaced persons camp where her parents and 8 brothers and sisters had sought refuge after fleeing the violence and oppression in their native Afghanistan. When Zahra was 8 or 9 years old, the family returned to the city of Kunduz in northern Afghanistan, where they settled. In Kunduz, the Taliban retained a presence, even after American and Allied forces had occupied the city. On several occasions, the family's home was targeted and attacked by militants. As a result, it was especially difficult for Zahra and her sisters to pursue the sort of education that they and their parents wanted. Eventually, Zahra found her way to SOLA, the School of Leadership in Afghanistan, a boarding school in Kabul that educated young Afghani women. It was through SOLA that we made the connection that brought her to St. George's. At St. George's, Zahra immediately distinguished herself with her curiosity, her determination, and her hunger for new experiences. I watched with pride as her achievements grew, and with deep admiration of the courage it must have taken to travel so far from her homeland and family to the peculiar parallel universe of an American boarding school. Beyond this cultural adjustment, Zahra was also required to participate in sports for the first time. She played basketball and ice hockey, but found her greatest success running cross country. Running became an important part of her experience, both in high school and in college at Hobart William Smith colleges, where Zahra enrolled after earning a full scholarship. At William Smith, Zahra studied biochemistry and continued running, training for and completing marathons and even a 50-mile ultramarathon. She became a writer, chronicling her journey in a blog. She was featured in Runner's World magazine and earned a spot as an ambassador at large for Free to Run, a global nonprofit that seeks to use running as a means to support women in war-torn countries and locations. In 2018, she was named one of Glamour magazine's College Women of the Year. After graduating from William Smith in 2019, Zahra continued to pursue her dream of attending medical school and accepted a fellowship at the University of Michigan, where she spent several years working in a lab, contributing to original research on cancer treatments, and helping to author several published papers. Despite all of these accomplishments, Zahra's visa status eventually expired, and she was unable to continue her work at the lab. Facing deportation from the United States and a forced return to Afghanistan, she has applied for political refugee status, which remains pending. In the face of all of these challenges, last summer, the Afghan government collapsed in the wake of the American withdrawal from the country. With the Taliban sweeping back into power, Zahra's family was in immediate danger, especially after the Taliban attacked and set fire to their family home in Kunduz. The family fled south to the capital city of Kabul, along with thousands of other refugees. After several harrowing weeks, and through sheer determination and force of will, Zahra was able to help her family escape, finding them space on a rescue flight organized in part by her contacts at Free to Run. One of her sisters was unable to reach the flight and had to make a risky overland trip south to the Pakistani border. Today, her family are all safe in the United States and in Canada, where refugee status is more easily granted. In short, Zahra is one of the most courageous, kind, interesting, and determined people I have ever known. I see in her the universal desire to pursue our dreams, even at deep personal cost, the love of family, even when they are far away, and the fundamental human desire to belong, even in a place that is unfamiliar and strange. So, in the spirit of Unity Day, it is my honor and privilege to introduce you to my former student, to a lifelong friend, Zahra Arabzada.
Hi everyone. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Peterson and Mrs. Peterson, for all the amazing words you have said. It definitely wouldn't have been possible without the support of you and your family members and everyone. It's good to be here with all of you on this special day. My name is Zahra Arabzada. I want to thank Mr. and Mrs. Peterson again for making this opportunity for me to be here with you on this special day. And I want to thank every single one of you for being here. You guys can hear me, right? Okay. Let me start by telling you a little bit about myself. I was born as an Afghan refugee in Iran, and later I was forced to return to my family's hometown in Kunduz, in northern part of Afghanistan. I attended the first boarding school in Afghanistan, where I gained leadership skills and learned English and met many of my international mentors. At 15, I came to the US on a scholarship. I was an unaccompanied minor from one of the most conservative areas of Afghanistan and one of the most conservative countries in the world, who suddenly found herself at a private school in Rhode Island, not unlike the Fountain Valley School. I would say not the easiest transition, as you can imagine. Ignorance is blessed, after all. I was convinced that I spoke fluent English and knew all about the American culture, American high school system. After all, I had watched The Mean Girls and was ready and mature enough to start a new journey all by myself. All notions that I would be disabused of very, very quickly on arrival. But I survived high school, went on to study biochemistry, and after graduation, worked in one of the US most renowned laboratories. And then my life was turned upside down again last summer, when the Taliban took over Afghanistan, in a cruel replay of events that had caused my family to become refugees again after 25 years. It became clear that not only I wasn't able to return to my country, but it wasn't safe for my family to be there. I'm here to tell you a little bit about myself and my family's journey, and I have been asked to talk about identity and belonging, concepts that I have thought about a lot in the past. I want to share with you 3 insights that have served me well. 1, the quest to belonging is constantly evolving. 2nd, get comfortable with the notion of not belonging. 3rd, be creative and use your experience to connect with people. So first, our identities are constantly evolving. Let me take you back to the very first time that I was made aware of my identity. It was 2003, I was 6 years old, and I had just finished taking a quiz where I matched different shapes, wrote 1 to 10, and the alphabet of Persian language. At the end, I was handed a new set of coloring pencil and taken to another room where my mom was sitting facing the guy in the suit. A massive Iranian flag hung behind him, and he was holding my paper. He got closer to me and said, "Afarin," which means bravo in Persian. I showed him my new set of coloring pencil. He then informed my mother that despite having a perfect score and qualifying in principle to attend schools with other Iranian children, the only option available for me was to attend school designated for Afghan refugees. The school with more students, less teachers, no reading, and certainly no coloring pencil. At age 6, I was made aware of the limitation in place for an Afghan refugee in Iran. Despite being illiterate, both of my parents focused on one thing, and that was to put all of us, me and my 8 siblings, through school. When Afghan children lost access to education in Iran in 2005, my parents decided to return to Afghanistan. Afghanistan was the very first place that I belonged. There was a comfort in knowing that I will never be asked to leave. I soon came to realize that I was about to be lumbered with another identity, that of being an independently minded woman in a highly traditional society. The year was 2006. I was 9 years old, now living in my hometown in Kunduz in northeast Afghanistan, which is close to Tajikistan. I decided to participate in a 5K race organized by a telephone company in my hometown. I was determined to not only participate, but win. Never mind, no running gear, no training, or understanding the concept of running. The police cars and the Humvees were guarding both sides of the street. My sister Fatima and I were among the top 10 finishers of the 5K, even though we almost died when we reached to the finish line. The promise was that the top 10 finishers would receive an orange bike. And I was super excited about that. So when I got my bike, I couldn't have been more excited. I guess pure stubbornness does pay off. But even though we were only 9 and 10 years old, our community considered us as girls to be too old to actually be biking in public. So our bike hung from the ceilings of our kitchen, unused, and collected dust over the years. Fast forward 12 years, by then I had started running properly in high school in America, realized I like it. I realized it helped me to cope with my trauma and anxiety, and realized I was reasonably good at it, probably the one sport that I was decent. I had run a few half marathon and a trail marathon. In 2018, I finished a 50-mile race under 16 hours. As I crossed the finish line in dark, utterly exhausted, all I could think about was that it had taken me to get there, what it had taken me to get there, and finally, I felt like I belonged. It didn't matter that I was an Afghan, that I was Muslim, that I was a woman, or that I had been a refugee at one point in life. I was just a runner like everybody else. And not only just a runner, but I was an ultra-marathoner. And at that moment, that I could do anything that I set my mind to. So I encourage you to acknowledge that some part of your identity is handed to you and can never be changed, such as the places that you were born. But for other part of your identity, you can make a choice, whether to accept it or to reject them, or whether to develop them into something else, perhaps something that you want to be identified as. Now I come to my second point. Get comfortable with not belonging to one permanent place. In 2012, I arrived in America with 2 suitcases and was absolutely taken back by the beauty of my new school in Rhode Island. I could probably fit half of my village in this space, I thought to myself. My advisor, Ms. DeHorsey, showed me my dorm room. She pointed out with a sticker that she had placed on the wall that showed the direction of the Mecca. For those who don't know, for Muslims, the direction of the Mecca is where you face to pray. For me, it was a normal thing. Well, that everybody in my country was Muslim, and that was an obvious thing. But now I recognize that as a special act of kindness towards a child who had arrived all by herself in a foreign country with a different culture. But even though the teachers and students made extra effort to understand me, they must have found some of my behaviors to be utterly odd and did not make sense probably. Every night before 8 or 10 p.m. check-in, you could find me standing by the library asking if anyone was going to the dorm house, which is less than 100 feet away from the library. There I was, wearing my scarf, carrying a backpack that was half of my weight, with a thick accent, repeating the same question over and over again. When I couldn't find anyone, I would run as fast as I could in a complete frenzy, holding on to my scarf, which always seemed to fall off my head. I eventually admitted to my teacher that I was extremely afraid of dark and that I was unable to walk to my dorm alone from the library. See, for the first 15 years of my life, I had never stepped a foot outside after sunset once. Nights were always affiliated with sounds of gunshot and the beginning of a dreadful 12-hour period. I spent the first few nights at my new school sleeping in my closet because my dorm bed had been placed right underneath the window, and all I could think about that if there is going to be an explosion, then it's going to shake this building so hard that the glasses will fall on my foot and it would hurt me and I would not be able to run or hide. So I spent the first few nights just sleeping in the closet despite being extremely claustrophobic. Can you imagine what I felt when I had to walk back to my dorm at night on my own? After my confession, my teachers and newly made friends accompanied me to my dorm for months. Soon it was enough that somebody stood by the library and watched me, and I would walk at a normal pace by myself. I spent many Saturday nights just walking around, embracing this newly acquired skill, and I was finally able to acquire more skill. Like I could eat clam chowder, something that had tasted really odd to me when I first arrived. Or I no longer had to tell people to slow down because I couldn't understand anything that they were saying. Or I got a hang of the popular clothes brand like Lululemon, which one had to wear in order to be cool in my school. And another alien concept in Afghanistan where you had your clothes made by a tailor in the market. But still, it was difficult to feel like I truly belonged. I was always the Muslim girl with my headscarf, my long clothes during my running practice. I needed extra lesson to catch up on 10 years of inadequate education. 2 years later, I returned to Afghanistan for the first time. Suddenly, I was a stranger in my own country. People immediately picked out that I had been away. I stood too close to men in the lineup. I looked people in the eyes while speaking instead of looking down. When I returned to my hometown, it seems small in comparison to the places I have been, like New York City, Washington, D.C. I had been on a plane that took me halfway across the world and struggled to talk to people whose universe didn't expand beyond the next village. It was cruel to realize that I no longer belonged in the place that formed and continued to form such a big part of my identity. Over the course of the past decade, I was only able to return to Afghanistan twice due to visa complication and because of my presence as an educated, westernized woman put my family at huge risk. The lack of access to my motherland brought pain and continuous feeling of loss. But it also brought the privilege and the opportunity to build another home, as hard as it might have been. I made new friends, learned so much about this new country, and grew in the process. It was only then that I fully came to terms with the fact that belonging cannot simply be tied to a place, and certainly not to one place. Despite never being accepted by the Iranian government or society, a part of me will always belong to the alleys of the camp where I spent the first few years of my life. A part of me will always belong to the friends who knew me as Curly Zahra, who defied rules in Kunduz. A part of me will always belong to my friend Palwasha, with whom I attended the demonstration for women's rights in Kabul, without fully acknowledging how dangerous that was. And now I have added new memories and new friends. A part of me belongs to my friend Julia, who taught me English swear words and had me repeat them to the dorm parent, oblivious as to their real meaning. Not good words. A part of me A part of me belongs to Miss Peterson, who picked my outfit for the tea party for seniors with matching white scarf. The curse with leaving different communities, cities, or country is that part of you will always and forever live in the places you left behind. And often it feels like you're always an ocean away from your soul. But the beauty is that you are given the opportunity to build so many new homes. As you discover how you have changed, as your community changed, and you go through life, use the experiences to build new relationships, learn empathy, and grow in the process. And this brings me to my third and final insight that I wanted to share with you. Be creative. Be the connector, the bridge between different communities in which you have ever existed. As many of you know, in August of 2021, the government of Afghanistan collapsed and my country was taken over by the terrorist group Taliban. 21 years of hard work of Afghans and our allies crumbled in front of our eyes. Chaos and fear took over the entire country and everyone rushed to the airport. 15 members of my family were still in Afghanistan, 10 were hiding in an apartment in Kabul, and my parents in the basement of our house in Kunduz, and the 3 others in our village. Scattered all around Afghanistan, they all feared being persecuted for being activists, lawyers, and human rights defenders, and for having their daughters and sisters abroad. The chaos grew every day, and leaving Afghanistan seemed like an impossible task. My sister and I started working on finding ways to evacuate. It felt as though the lives of our family depended on our ability to get them out of Afghanistan. With the passage of every day and the deadline of August 31st, the final withdrawal of US soldiers from Afghanistan, we were running a race against time, and this was a race like no other. Soon we found that it was impossible to do this task alone. I reached out to my support group in the US, and we were able to ask many government office holders to assist us in evacuating my family members. Many of my first home away from home, my boarding school, St. George's, enabled me to continue pushing forward. Mr. Peterson took on the responsibility of editing all the letters that we sent to various legislators throughout America. I combined forces with Free to Run, an organization that empowers women and girls to safely and boldly engage in sports in conflict areas. 20 people from 3 different continents had one mission. Day in and out, we knocked on every door that we saw as an opportunity. We actually forced each other to go for another quick run, or maybe a longer one, or sleep for an hour longer to find motivation from resilient and strong family members and staff who we were hoping to evacuate. After many long sleepless nights, my family was able to enter the airport and board a charter flight to Qatar on August 27th, the day after one of the deadliest suicide attacks, which at least 183 people were killed, including 170 Afghan civilians and 13 members of US military. Their sacrifices enabled my family members, along with thousands of other Afghans, to reach safety. As the charter flight finally took off from Kabul International Airport, my eyes closed for 12 hours straight. A massive weight was lifted off of my shoulders. It felt like this was the first time in weeks, if not months, that I got proper sleep, free of worries. But this has not been the end of the struggle. My family members have lost their homes, their friends, everything that was familiar to them, and have arrived in a foreign country with literally the clothes on their back. My parents are refugees for the second time in their lives, suffering the pain of losing access to their motherland for the second time. My father has lost vision in his left eye in the process due to the lack of access to doctor. They have lived in 4 different countries, 8 different military camps, 2 different temporary housing, and as of last month, 11 out of 14 family members have moved into their final permanent apartment, and the other 4 are still waiting to be resettled. They don't have any other option but to build their lives here. I hope that none of you will ever have to go through a nightmare of an evacuation and the loss of your country to recognize the value in living in various communities. I have resented war and poverty for stealing so many moments of my life that could have been joyful, stress-free, and normal. But I have come to accept that the very fact that these hard experiences, the heartache that came from not being able to see my father for 7 years, losing access to my motherland, and many other experiences have also given me the resilience, strength, and maturity that I needed to succeed in life. I encourage you to make sure to make the most of the communities that you live in and learn as much as possible, since you never know how you will be the bridge between communities. In these times of global connection and at the same time great division, humankind needs all of us to build bridges between communities and people so that we can all survive and thrive. In summary, here are the 3 lessons I shared with you. 1, the quest to belong is constantly evolving. Understand your evolving self and be aware of your connection to your current community. 2nd, get comfortable with the notion of not belonging to one place. 3rd, be creative and use your experiences to connect with people. I hope the journey of each and every single one of you is filled with adventures, joys, and opportunities to learn, grow, and share. Thank you so much for having me.
Zahra, thank you for those words that I think resonate with our community, and I hope today those words center on the purpose of what we are doing together. So thank you. For those of you who are interested in learning more from Zahra and speaking with her later, this evening we will have an optional Q&A for anyone who would like to attend in the sala from 6 to 7. Day students, please join if you can. If you cannot be here, please reach out to me and I will certainly help set that up so you can have that virtual experience. I would like to quickly share a few details about today and our expectations. So at 10:10, we will have our first workshop. That's going to be our longer workshop. We do have some time for faculty, sponsors, and workshop leaders to prep those spaces, and I encourage you to head there and just make sure all tech support is under control so you can have those fabulous workshops without any issues. As we move forward, before we depart here, please be sure to connect with a DEI leader. They will give you a sticker that will be part of our belonging lunch. So DEI leaders, can you please stand up real quick just so we know who you are, who we can look for stickers. So before we depart today, they will be outside of the chapel to hand out stickers to anyone who has not been able to receive one yet. So while some of us may perceive the dining hall as a place that provides sustenance and an opportunity to relax with friends and take time from the academic day, there are others who feel differently. So during Unity Day, we're going to attempt to change that dynamic. We are going to have a lunch of belonging. Everyone will be eating at the dining hall to get to know the people at their table. The point of this experience is to begin to understand how others may feel and try to help them belong in an environment that they may not feel comfortable in right now. And we'll do this by getting to know who they are and who we are. And so I hope that the words that Zahra shared with us today can be at the forefront of our intentions as we gather around a meal. Remember, Unity Day is about appreciating and respecting each other's boundaries as well. So while we eat together, please be mindful about the experiences or comfort that our peers might be having or experiencing. We can support each other by showing up in those meaningful and authentic ways. So please try your best to fully participate in our lunch of belonging. We will then continue with our last two workshops, student life reflection and sports practice. Some coaches have noted their team's participation in our community kickball game today at 4 p.m. on the quad. Come as a player or a spectator, all are welcome. Many thanks needs to go to the brave students who are leading workshops, and many for the first time. Thank you for all the faculty sponsors who are supporting this vulnerable learning. Days like today come together when the community comes together to make this happen. Thank you to Mr. Webb and Mr. Musigno, who understand the importance of stepping out of our classes so we can spend time pouring into each other. Thank you to the DEI committee, the SCO students, Ms. Kirchhoff and Mr. Badger, who have worked to support these workshops and the details. And a big thank you to Ms. Oliveri Barton for her foundational support in these programs. Thank you again to Mr. Peterson, who has helped connect Zahra with our community. As you can see, today takes many hands on deck. So please take some time today to share your appreciation with anyone who has contributed to your growth and learning today. Now, let us continue to learn together. Please be sure that you grab your sticker from a DEI committee member or your advisor. So advisees who have advisors with the last name A through F, you are dismissed first. We will attempt to do this in an orderly fashion.